The image that I have, which I may have mentioned to you, is the one of using your perceptual field as a microscope. It's like tuning from channel 7 to channel 6 on television, channel 5, channel 4. If your preoccupation is color, you are aware of color. If your preoccupation is sex, sexual male or female, you are aware of that dimension, always in looking at another person. Is it a man or a woman I'm looking at? If you were a scientist of body development, you might be a Sheldon somatotypist. And you would look at people in terms of whether they are endomorphs, mesomorphs, or ectomorphs. And you'd say there's a 377 or a 422, depending on whether the shoulders were big and the hips narrow, or the hips tall and thin, or short and fat, or whatever. Now, if you flip the microscope one little flip, and you look a little deeper into another person, what you begin to see is personality. And then you see everybody as, that's a cheerful person, that person is very pleasant, that person seems depressed, and those of us that are preoccupied on the lower astral planes where our personalities exist, see only other people as personality. That person was nice to me. That's a nice woman. She's sort of motherly. That's a psychological variable. And we look in psychological dimensions at other people. Right? Okay, if you flip it once more into another astral plane, you will see astrological things, as I mentioned before. And then there are only 12 permutations in the world. And you see everybody as Leo or Aries and Sagittarius. And when you look at another person, that's what you see. You say, I'm seeing a Leo. If you go one more flip, what you see when you look at another person is another person and they're looking back at you. Okay. You look into their eyes and you see somebody else. Are you in there? I'm here, far out. And you look at your packaging. And you see the packaging. The packaging involves the astral, all the individual differences. There's still somebody separate from you in there, but the individual differences are more like the veils or the packaging of the product. You can say, you in there, I'm in here. Here we are. We're two beings. Two beings. Now, you take a relationship, say, to your mother or your father or your child, who you've got this long history of treating them. That's mother. See, that's my daughter. See? That's Janie. See? That's Mary Jane. It's little Mary Jane. Hello, little Mary Jane. See? And then you flip the microscope with Mary Jane, and suddenly there's another being inside Mary Jane who isn't Mary Jane at all. It's not Mary Jane. It's not like it's Sarah Lou. It's not anybody. It's just another being saying, I'm in here too. I'm just like you. Now what happens is, for efficiency, so that we can sleepwalk through life, it is usually most efficient to get completely into individual differences and treat everybody just like they were yesterday. So if you were Mary Jane yesterday, you'll probably be Mary Jane today. And if I've treated you as somebody who's a slob, I might as well continue to treat you as a slob. That's known as efficiency of social relationships. Because if every time I meet another person, instead of being preoccupied with individual differences, I go through them and I see another being who's just like me, well, it's a whole new ball game every time we meet. Like, who are you this time? Oh, I'm still Mary Jane. Okay. We'll play that one out today. It turns out, if you want to go further mystically and do another flip, you get so you're looking at yourself when you look at somebody else. And it's all yourself dancing with yourself, making believe you're separate. The point is that no matter what your relationship is with who, the same rules apply. It doesn't matter whether it's your parent or your child or your enemy or your friend or your therapy patient or your therapist. You treat them all the same way. You treat them with compassion. You treat them with an appreciation of the fact that we are beings who are in incarnations. You quiet yourself, you center yourself, and then it's all possible. And in every relationship, it's all possible. Because you're not laying trips on everybody around you all the time. Because you're not sitting around judging, you should be this way. If you were a good father, you'd be. Okay? My child is going to be. Okay? Maharaji kept saying to me, Ramdas, don't you see it's all perfect? Everybody's being just who, everybody is a perfect. Like when you go out in the woods and you see all the trees, you don't say, well, that tree isn't like that tree. I wish it were, if that tree didn't bend like that, it would be a good tree. Somehow with trees, you can allow it. You can allow that each tree is just perfect the way it is. And there is a whole other way of looking at these gunas, these strands of the universe, interacting and seeing how in each individual manifestation these strands have merged in such a way to lead to another perfect statement of the unstatable. And you give each incarnation space to manifest as it needs to manifest. 5 years ago, I was busy trying to change my father. And now I have grown enough so I can leave him alone. I can just love him as he is. Historically, we have all been very deeply involved in a romantic image of ourselves. And that romanticizing is part of what would be called personality level. It's a low astral, and the whole astral planes, all of the planes are romantic. So that you may finish with the physical plane identity and you say, well, I know that I'm not Joe anymore, but who I am is the Messiah. But don't tell anybody just yet, because I'm not ready to manifest. The game always is to just keep letting go and letting go. And Maharaji's statement, sub-ek, has been my saving thing. Sub-ek, there's only one. I remember a dialogue I had with Trungpa. I said, Trungpa, I don't notice all that stuff. I just notice God. There's all one. It's none of my business. I'm just aiming for the one. Now, he and I have been having a continuing dialogue, which is a very interesting one, about responsibility. And if I can say it clearly, if I deny the planes of evil and good and individual differences, I am caught in denial for fear of all of this stuff. And I am no less hung up than if I had been totally preoccupied with individual differences and failed to appreciate that behind it all lies the one. And what my growth is that I am growing into being able to assume the responsibility in the realm of individual differences, at the same moment keeping fully aware of the fact that one lies behind it all. And that's where that blend, that, as Trungpa said to me one day, it's a very fine line between accepting the responsibility for individual differences. Now, you begin to notice, as you start to begin to be a connoisseur of the law, of the universe, of the divine law, that nothing seems to be happening by chance anymore. That who you meet in the supermarket, who you meet in the street, isn't random. Who you end up going to bed with isn't random, no matter, even if you've gotten to the philosophy where you think it is. All of it is lawfully working out each individual's karma. And then you say, my God, what a computer system must be behind this. See? I mean, you read in the Hasid literature that not a leaf turns, but that God does not know. You think, far out. A leaf turning? And what's fun is when you're playing with other beings called satsang or sangha, who are equally conscious and working on themselves, and you go, and the other person goes, and you're both looking at each other saying, far out, look at this one. Right? The cosmic humor of the predicament starts to sneak in. Got you again. Because to what in you? They get to a model you've got going about how you think it ought to be. And since your game of awakening is to ferret out those places in you where you're clinging to models of this or that, what more can you ask for than that somebody would come along to wake you up again? And if they can get you furious, isn't that nice of them? Isn't that a compassionate act? In terms of your relation to your guru who sent the person, who is the person, what a compassionate act. To really get me bugged. Thank you. See? I was in a dialogue with Rinpoche up in Vermont, in which he said to me, what do you do about sorcerers? And I said, what sorcerers? I don't see any sorcerers. I don't do anything about them. My guru takes care of me. It's his business. I love God. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. And Rinpoche said, you're copping out. He says, you must assume responsibility. He actually called me into his room and he said, Ramdas, these are critical times and we must assume responsibility. And I thought about that. I decided he was putting me on. So I said to him, look, all times are critical, Rinpoche. And God has all the responsibility. What are you coming on to me for? He says, no, you don't understand. Now, what has evolved as we've been working with this concept of responsibility, I've become to have a little deeper understanding, at least at one level, And it really revolves around the issue of free will and determinism. And that is that you live simultaneously with the understanding that both of those are occurring. And that on this plane, in this room, you think you are having choices and you decide to come here and you make decisions, and that's right, and that's happening, and assume the responsibility for that, just like I am assuming the responsibility to be doing what I'm doing now. It is also true that all of this is a totally programmed trip we're all on. We are all just running off our stuff lawfully, and we are each other's karma, and it's all the Guru's Leela. It's all God's Leela. It's all just play. And every now and then you get a flick, or you get into a deeper understanding where you see your own behavior as the movie running off, or as the law unfolding, and all of your choices and decisions and crises, and you see it all as, what will he do next? And you turn the page and it was all written already. See? And then ultimately you accept the responsibility for the fact that you're writing the story. Like first you're under the karma, you're in the gunas, you're in nature, and at that level it is all mechanical Mansville. At that point you're just running off mechanically. And in that mechanical runoff you think you're making choices, and make them. That's okay. Then you begin to be more aware and you see that it's all mechanical. And as you keep going and you transcend the gunas, you come into the Brahmanic state and you are once again truly free. And in that freedom, the only things you can do, because there's no desire within you, the only things you would end up doing are the Dharma. That is, you would end up working within the law. Because there's nothing else you would do. Because why would you? Who would want to? So what I'm saying is that I'm getting to the point where I assume responsibility for my dance. At the same moment, as far as I'm concerned, it's all being done to me. And I'm trying to keep both of those going at once. Because before I was caught in rejecting the responsibility and saying he's doing it. And that's because I was afraid of power. And you will notice in the sadhana that as you start to do purification and as you do all this meditation, you start to get incredible power. You get power over your own environment and over other people.